Today's episode is brought to you in part by our sponsor, Inato. Inato's entirely free platform is empowering community-based research sites all around the globe with access and unheard-of levels of visibility to the right top clinical research trials. You can see open or upcoming trials as far as 12 months in advance, and you also get some really cool tools and features to help you focus on trials that are the best fit for you and your patients. And look, I can tell you from experience, it's incredibly important to be able to select trials and really focus on the right ones versus taking the more shotgun approach that many sites, including myself, have often done more historically. Inato's advocates help you showcase for sponsors your diverse patient populations, community engagement efforts, diverse staff, and really all the things that make your site unique. So sign up today. It only takes about 2 minutes. That's inato.com, inato.com. Once again, that is inato.com. Hello and welcome to the Note to File podcast, a collection of interviews, best practices, and candid commentary for clinical research sites. I'm your host, Brad Hightower. This week, our guest is Jason Palasota. Jason's always been incredibly passionate about improving the quality of clinical research services. He first started out on the ground level as a research coordinator for Sotero Research, formerly known as Diabetes and Glandular Research. From there, he began to develop an even deeper respect for the industry, continued to pursue opportunities that allow him to drive change. After he worked at the ground level, he went over to the dark side, as he describes it, and held some various roles with Worldwide Clinical Trials, Research Point Global, and IQVIA. Jason gained more experience in the field, and much like many of us, became increasingly aware of the significant relationship and communication gaps that exist within the industry. He was determined to bridge these gaps by forming strong partnerships between exceptional clinical research sites and innovative sponsors and CROs. His goal was very simple: make a positive change in people's lives through top-tier healthcare solutions around the world. Hence, Clinitiative Health Research was born. And you get to hear all about that here in the first portion of the podcast. This week, we discussed various business development models for sites, why sites might want to consider partnering with a business development vendor, and the incredible significance of relationships in clinical research. This was a really fun conversation. Without further ado, Jason Palasota. All right, this week we welcome Jason Palasota. Jason, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going great, Brad. How are you today?
Oh, I could complain, but I probably do enough of that. No, it's good. It's good. We work in a very chaotic industry, as you well know.
Yeah, absolutely. It is chaotic and ever changing. And, as long as we can adjust with those changes and do our best, then I think that's all we can ask for.
That's it, man. That's it. Where are you coming to us from today?
We're based here out of Dallas, Texas. We have most of our staff here, a couple remote folks, but trying to keep the company local and everybody in a single office. It really adds to collaboration and different adjustments that we go through, not only as a company, but again, trying to be flexible with the industry standards as well. So we're here out of good old Texas.
Nice. I think it's always cool to talk to people close. I feel like so much of the stuff happens, on the coasts. I mean, obviously in North Carolina, but it's fun to have somebody you're just, 2.5 hours away from me. So I feel like you're in my own backyard. Did you?
That's right.
Did you have an opportunity to go to ACRP recently?
Yes, we were able to attend ACRP here in Dallas, and it was a fantastic conference. We met a lot of fascinating folks and was able to throw a home court advantage. We had a little happy hour at the hotel, and we had a fantastic turnout. About 100 folks joined us, and it's great just to network. And we were very excited to have something here in Dallas instead of traveling east and west so often. But it was a nice event, and we got to make some beautiful connections, and we look forward to continuing those discussions with the folks that we met there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I strongly considered driving down. I had my daughter had a soccer tournament in Tulsa, so I was the opposite direction, unfortunately. But yeah, it is cool to have them. I mean, a lot of research happens in this part of the country too. Maybe that's sometimes overlooked. So it is cool to see more acknowledgement and conferences happening here instead of it's like, I mean, does it need to be Vegas every time? Does it need to be Boston every time?
That's right.
Come on. We can do it. There's plenty here in the middle of the country, right?
That's right. It's an easier flight for most people. And, there's a lot of talk about the Third Coast. I lived in Austin for a while, Austin, Texas. And of course, they try to designate Austin as the Third Coast. You hear this sort of chatter in the DFW area, Third Coast. I'm not sure in Oklahoma what the chatter is up there, but someone's trying to claim it.
Yeah, Oklahoma it lives in that weird place. Like we're not really the South, but we're not really the Midwest either. So I never know. I never know what to call us, but yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, before we get too much deeper, I just want to jump in like we do all my guests. I like to kind of hear everybody's backstory and what brought them into the clinical trial space. I know you've got a long history in clinical trials. So if you would just, tell us a bit about your backstory and your clinical trial industry origins, if you will.
Sure, no problem. I started about 18 years ago in the industry now, and I may look young and not stressed, but I am. And I got very fortunate. Right out of college, I had one of my advisors approach me and asked if I would like to be a part of a clinical research site. She knew I was studying for the MCAT, as I think everyone tries to be a doctor, or at least considers it going through school. So
definitely a recurring theme, especially in the research industry. I was the same way. I thought, oh yeah, for sure, I'm going to be a doctor. Nope.
That's right. Yeah, and so she said, while you're studying for this MCAT, how about you get your foot in the door with research and add something to your resume, and you might have fun doing it. So it turns out over in San Antonio, Texas, where I'm from, it turns out there were about 5 or 6 other guys from my class that were already working there. And so I really was wondering what a research site was. And I started out as a coordinator and learned all the ropes, at least from the site perspective. And what I loved most about working at that site were the patients and the fact that I could work with the nurses, doctors, and staff, but I didn't necessarily have to be the doctor. There's so many different components of a site. It's so complicated, and all these pieces have to work together. And I was very fascinated by that first experience, and it still drives me today. Really, the patients. It was a endocrinology site, and the patients that came through for DPN studies and diabetes and things were so happy to be there, and they were so just charismatic. I know they had a lot of things going on in their life, but there's just something to being there front and center with patients and subjects and helping them while also helping the larger industry move things forward. So that spark still drives me today. And so I try to, bring that up as often as I can for people who work with the company that may not necessarily have come from the site level. And so we have it on our agenda to go visit some of our clients so they can get a look firsthand, at least briefly, to know what it's like. And that really sparked my interest in research. So I basically abandoned the physician and continued in research. And I joined the quote dark side and went to the CRO route. And so I started out with worldwide clinical trials and the proposals and contracts. So I was really learning how they put these things together from the sort of the back office point of view. My goal was to get into sales and business development, as they call it. And then I was able to transfer into internal sales or internal business development. So supporting the external folks. And it got to the point where I was ready to get out there, ready to hit the pavement. I was getting more and more confident in my abilities and understanding of the industry and what needs to be done. So then I transitioned to an external position was not available at WCT at the time. So I went to Research Point Global. And I worked directly, it's a mid-sized CRO that's in Austin, Texas. And so I moved to Austin from San Antonio, and they've been purchased by a larger Asian company recently. And so I was business development side by side with the CEO. So now I was learning a different perspective in the industry. And during that time, I was able to start going to conferences and just monitor and learn and from this seasoned CEO how things work on the sponsor and CRO side. And then finally, my CRO journey led me to Quintiles, which transitioned into IQVIA. And then I was able to learn another side of the industry. And it's just very fascinating, all the different levels of the industry and how disconnected everybody is and how much of a rat race it is on their side, sponsor CRO side, just as much it is on the other side, the site side. During my years in business development, I started getting some phone calls from clinical sites, whether they were friends that owned them or outside of that, asking me. And somehow they found me in their desperate attempt to get into new trials or at least understand who the new contact was at a sponsor, a CRO they worked with for many years, but maybe got acquired or just people leave the companies. And so I would direct them to the different folks that I knew. My network, included the directors at pharmaceutical companies that I was pitching for IQVIA and the other CROs to conduct their trials. And then also internally, the CROs the teams within the CROs that actually handle site selection. Right. And I said, hey, the site, give them a look. Well, after the merger with IMS and Quintiles, things can get a little hectic, and so it dawned on me that, I was able to obtain all of these lessons learned from these different parts of the industry. And throughout my time, that sites continued to ask me for help. And so I did some research and quite didn't know the vendors that even existed at the time, but realized they're just, I couldn't find a vendor, a BD vendor that exemplified the details and dedication from the business development programs that I was trained in. And so it occurred to me that there needs to be a solution provided. So I ventured off and thought that initiative was a good concept to run with, taking the initiative, hence Clinitiative, the clinical initiative. I had gone through hundreds of names and still do to this day because it's very hard to spell. There's a lot of I's, and I didn't know if that was good or bad for marketing, but here we are. And so that's how Clinitiative was born, ultimately to help sites. I started out with one single small site and expanded into 2, 3, and 4. And as we were able to grow internally, we were able to offer our services to larger organizations all the way to established site networks. And so the processes that we've built, but the communications flows, the workflows, the hands-on approach and customized approach for each of the sites is what made us unique and continues to make us unique. And so we're not so large that we can't pay attention to each site. So we're just in a good spot. I'm very proud of the team we have and the program we built. And so we continue to expand, and, very excited to talk with you, Brad, about myself and the company. I know it's been a long time coming, but I forgot to thank you on the front end, I think, but I do appreciate it. But that's basically the summary of the story there for me.
No, and I love it. So first of all, as I often say, there's always this little, part of me that has a soft spot for anyone who started out on the site side and can at least share a little bit in that struggle. Again, not that each part of the industry doesn't have its own, but again, uniquely site endearing and have that sort of level. But I get calls every week from sites, new sites, maybe even somewhat fairly established sites, and they're saying like, "Hey, how do we get some new studies, man? Like, where do you get your studies?" And as I find that the more I talk, the more I realize like it's just a seemingly random series of events sometimes that lead to trial opportunities, or as you point out, like maybe you go through the trouble of making a good contact, but maybe that's only good for one therapeutic area inside one company for one product. And so it's really like chasing your tail. It's very difficult for people to do, especially as they're starting, newer sites. So, you start to look, right? Like, okay, what's out there, which kind of begs the question, like, what are the various business development models? I guess, you think of SMOs or brokers or even people like me who are just sometimes sharing study opportunities with no intent on getting anything from it. But if you're a site, like what are the models that are out there, and what's maybe a little bit different about Clinitiative you might want to take a look at?
That's a great question. I think that companies, there are always some new companies out there that evolve. So I may not be the best person to talk about all of the models out there, but we can kind of summarize when we talk to our sponsor and CRO partners and alliances, and they want to get to know Clinitiative. There are usually some check boxes there. So they're already, in their minds, they already have some check boxes. And typically it's a broker, right? A broker is typically an organization or an individual that collects a lot of different studies. And the study leads is not incredibly a hard thing to do. Most people can gather study leads. It's a lot of public information. And what a broker will do typically is send out a message to maybe hundreds of sites and say, I have this opportunity or the study lead. If you're interested, here are our terms and conditions. And that can also vary. It can be maybe a flat fee, possibly a percentage of the revenue. But the point I'm trying to make with the broker is that there's no site pre-qualification, as I understand. There's stuff on a wall to see what sticks. So it can be a very what I'm hearing from sites is they're getting tons of emails that don't apply to them, right? And it just gets, after a while, you just tell this individual or company, hey, take me off your list. You're not working on my behalf. And they could probably do pretty well as an organization because there's a lot of sites that need work and a lot of sites that start. And so there's a place for them for sure. Another category is a site management organization, and there are different flavors of that type of company. We believe they are unique is that they may take too much of the revenue from a site. They may limit the site too far. And typically newer sites that just start are targeted by these companies to say, hey, we're going to provide infrastructure, provide all these things, the studies, the coordinators, SOPs. All we're asking for is a large percentage of the budget. Now that during that time, there's no guidance given to these new sites that says, hey, that's rather significant for the risk you're taking. And you're trying to start a business. It's a very expensive prospect to do. And so there are, it is a model for certain sites and it works. So where Clinitiative comes in is we fall somewhere in the middle. And where we fall is we have some good flexibility options. The flagship service is, okay, you come on board after you're qualified. And so the qualification process is making sure that you have at least some basic understanding of clinical research and that you've had some success in clinical research. We will take on newer sites, but typically we'd like to have a certain resume and things like that before they jump onto our network, because we are known to have high quality sites. Our sponsors and CROs continue to work with us and partner with us. So when you become a client of Clinitiative, we take a deep dive into your company. Okay. With all being respectful and not digging into all the numbers, but we want to know, hey, what have you done before successfully? What have you failed in terms of studies? What are you doing now? And what would you like to do in the future? So we're performing a sort of gap analysis, and we're going to also consult with you and say, these are some weaknesses we see from our perspective, and these are some things we'd advise you to do, but if we can do these things for you, with you, and help you along the way, you'd be a great Clinitiative site. And so basically we're designing a strategy for your particular attributes. And so with that said, we have all your metrics on hand. We have all of the highlights. If you have a really strong physician or even a strong staff member who's been doing research for many years, right? So we sell your unique attributes of your site. How diverse is your patient population? Diversity is a whole nother topic. We actually came out with a paper, a sort of guidance for sites, CROs, and sponsors. So I think it is on our website, but we didn't make that public. But before that, we only gave it to our sites. And basically, we don't have to go too much into it, but we do have certain initiatives we do like to push. So how diverse is your, and if you're not sure, we're going to help you get those metrics. Okay. We're going to ask you the right questions. It's not just how diverse is the area, but what are the diversity metrics for your database, and what could you reach, and things like that. How diverse is your staff, et cetera. So we ask a lot of questions around your company, so we can build basically a marketing strategy for you. We also have this really beautiful way that you can prioritize your indications. So if it's a system that's been evolved over years. I actually was a programmer back in high school and college, and I kind of brought all that to all the companies I worked in. And finally, Clinitiative, it's really funny how we are just a sum of all of our experiences. So we built a beautiful platform internally that we are going to make available to sites and sponsors soon. But our internal platform, basically, you can, as a site or as a client, get in there and say, okay, my priority is diabetes, is a number one. A number two is, say, pain management. And it's a number two because I've done it before. I just need to see more details on that trial. But for sure, I want to do diabetes. Okay. And then number three is something you want to expand into. And that could, we have, I think, 500 or 600 different indications you can choose from. And so that's basically, how we're different. I think that we care about each individual site. You have bi-weekly phone calls with your account manager who's experienced and knows what they're doing. We talk about each site every week in our executive meetings. And the last thing I think that makes us different, besides the attention each site gets from us, is we sell. We spend our hours talking with sponsors and CROs about our clients. And that's the hard part. The lead part generation is not hard. The organization can be complicated, but we've got it down. But it's the sales. What are you telling the sponsors and CROs that why that site should be a part of that selection process? And not only, it's not a one-time thing. It's consistency. It's follow-ups. We have the part of the outreach program we've built has built-in follow-up times, so we do not miss a beat. Now, it's nothing that a site can't build out internally, and but this is all we do all day. This is all we specialize in, and all we're thinking about are the best interests of our sites. And when one of our clients gets a win, we get excited in the office. It feels like we get a win because it is a lot of work. It's a lot of hours, but it is exciting. And again, it all comes, for me at least, from my first experience in clinical research, knowing that the right patients will get this treatment. And so I think that passion is the passion wrapped up with the sophistication of the program and the desire to really help sites of all levels is what makes us different.
Well, I think this is, again, still a problem sites face, is finding studies and the right studies, and to sort of touch back on a few of the points. I mean, when I started, we tried a little bit of everything. We tried a list that we paid $500 a month for that was just sort of random email addresses with maybe an NCT if you're lucky, or a study title, Great. Okay, here's 30 studies. I guess, maybe 5 or 6 look decent. Let's shoot out some cold emails and see what happens.
Yep.
And then everything from that to, the more sort of pharmaceutical or clin edge models that existed where, maybe as a site, we, interestingly, I think some of those models aren't as attractive unless you just really need a study badly, because, we would get studies, and some of our buddies would get a study through one of these, SMO, and our budget would be almost twice as much as theirs because they had to take the negotiated budget from the SMO broker. I don't even know what you would call them necessarily at that point. But again, if you're a site who's looking to get up and going, maybe that's okay for you. I really do relate to your, value of, like, everything is very personalized, I feel like. And, for us running sites, we recognize that. I've seen a lot of failure when I think everybody tries to do everything the same way and scale to sort of like uniformly, because we know that every doctor we work with is different. Every clinic we're inside is different. Everywhere. Everything you do, it's different. I think you have to respect that and mold to that. To your point, find the strengths, help bolster the weaknesses as much as possible. I don't think you see that much in a business development partner. So again, I can really respect that, because I think that's what I found to be one of the biggest values in our success, is being able to recognize that and be sort of self-aware to know how to work with that. Right. And I think that's, again, super uncommon.
That's right. And that's why we were developed. I just couldn't find a solution out there myself. And I'd ask friends who own sites and they just weren't satisfied with what was out there at the time. And so there was room for us. There was a gap there for us, and we still are filling it, but and there's a lot of work to do. But we have a great program. Our sites have been, and our clients have been, very happy with our process, and they see that from day one. As soon as we start onboarding them, they see these people care, these people pay attention, and even if they haven't necessarily won a trial the first month or two with us, they're saying Clinitiative is on its way. I mean, they have the opportunities in my pipeline are exactly what I want to do. And the account managers know exactly where each of those programs are at any given time. We document every single painstaking conversation and plan strategy for how we're going to help that site win that study. Now, don't get me wrong. We have also the best interests of our sponsors, CRO partners, is why they come back to us, because we have this ability to consider, many PIs and sites, and they tell us, or we ask, what are your top 5 things you need for the study? Just give it to me straight, man. If there are clients that don't have those things, we're not going to waste their time, because we're not going to want them to go. Now, there are some times when there are strategies out there, I guess, if the site just wants to get some recognition from that sponsor CRO. Hey, I just want to be in their database. I know we're not the best fit. Or maybe they're saying, hey, we would like to at least, we want to potentially expand into that area. But we're going to let the sponsor CRO know, okay, this is a site, they're excellent. They've done excellent work on these type of studies that might be relatable or related, but they don't have the exact experience or but we would like you to consider them. And typically they do. At least consider them, and at least we can get that feedback back to the site. So we're not essentially just wasting people's time on both sides. So we essentially are, in a weird way, absorbing all of the time that it would take a site to look for studies and pursue studies. And we're absorbing the time for sponsors and CROs to find good sites that fit the criteria. That's essentially what we're doing.
Well, yeah. And talk to me a little more about that. Because even though, I'm always looking for ways to bolster our business development. Mm-hmm. I like to do it. I do a fair amount of it, but mm-hmm. frankly, I can't be everywhere all the time. Right. I can't be chasing down a lead all day or whatever right. the case may be. I can't be in HubSpot keeping meticulous notes about every conversation I've had. Yeah. All these things are very challenging, especially there's a lot of small sites out there who just don't have a guy or a woman committed to BD all the time. Some do. And, maybe that makes perfect sense for them. I mean, first of all, there's no reason you can't do both, right? I could still mm-hmm. chase down studies and work sure. with someone like Clinitiative. Do you guys have like some sort of like ROI that you've seen specifically for sites, and why, or is it better than going in-house? If you're looking at that, I mean, say you've grown to the point to where there's a decision to be made. Mm-hmm. Do you go in-house or do you farm it out?
Well, if you're going to hire an in-house business development person with the right experience and network and processes and organizational process as well, then, it depends, I suppose, where you are in the country and all these different factors. But you're probably looking at, north of 100,000 for sure, if not maybe below 200, maybe depends. And so what you're paying for a service like ours is a lot less. And you're getting a lot more bang for your buck in a sense. You're paying for a very experienced team that other team members have come from the site level as directors for 20 years. Others have come from the CRO world, and we constantly interview folks from sponsor. We are very excited about some of the interviews we have who'd like to join our program. And so you're getting such a great mix of talent from the different various parts of the industry for less essentially than what you would pay a full-time person in-house, that it's worth at least looking into. And so in terms of the ROI, it really depends on what the site would like to get into. If you're trying to get into something like rare disease and it's something you haven't done before, that's quite a challenge for us. We're a BD sales organization. And that is going to be a little harder sell for us, as opposed to if you're trying to do internal medicine or family medicine studies, asthma, diabetes, atopic derm. Those are a bit lower hanging fruit. And so it depends on what you're trying to go for as a site. But, our sites and our clients, they've experienced a high level of ROI on our program. Each quarter, they're expecting at least a single win or more. It really depends. And I also want to say that it does depend on how responsive the site is and how engaged they are with Clinitiative, right? So it's same as if you had an in-house business development person, but you're paying no attention to him or her, you may not get the return you want from that individual. Same with us. The folks that work with our program, that provide the metrics and the things we need from them during the onboarding, will have a lot of success through our program. And we've had several sites be so successful that they were able to be acquired by either larger organizations or VC companies. And we love that, because it only validates our program. And, those are the people that are telling other folks, hey, check out Clinitiative. They've done very well for us. And so we really appreciate those referrals we continuously get. And so while it's no guarantee of a positive ROI, because a lot of it depends on the site side. If you have the initiative and you have the passion that we have, and we build that synergy together, you will be successful with our program. And if not, we'll talk about it and we'll figure out what we can do to make that better on both sides. But we are a pretty well-oiled machine, and we're always looking for good sites to come on board, and that's how that works.
Yeah, I do think it's, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is sort of a opinion, but I feel like to do really successful BD, it's like first of all, this is like a very relationship based industry. I feel like you gain these relationships over time. And, a lot of those are very like useful in only like one context, right? Like if you make friends with a IBD person, like you can't take that over to a neurology clinic and bring those leads with you. So it doesn't make sense. So,
right.
And that's well and good, if you find exactly the right person with exactly the right experience who's been doing it a long time. But instead, why wouldn't you work with someone like Clinitiative, where you've got a group of people who all have diverse levels of experience and backgrounds? You don't have to try to solve every problem yourself. You've got a team to really fall back on, which again, I find it challenging. We work across almost every therapeutic area. Mm-hmm. So it's incredibly difficult for one person, maybe even two people, to go try to attack every indication that exists to see what's out there. And it's just, I feel like it can't be done in a very effective manner. I'll be the first to tell people I love doing it, but I'm also laughably disorganized. So, I don't do myself any favors sometimes by trying to do it myself. So maybe recognizing that weakness and just leaning into the experience of people who've been doing it their whole careers. I mean, again, it can be hard for us, whatever you want to say, entrepreneurs or founders, to give up some of that control. But ultimately, I think it's probably beneficial more often than not,
Well, you brought up two topics that I wanted to address. And one was, we are a relationship industry, and that's absolutely true. So while working at the larger, or all the CROs really, we didn't rely too much on technology. Technology was a good reference, but it was good old fashioned, pick up the phone, meet people, understand who they are first, understand, and this is the time that it takes for us to be successful in Clinitiative, at least. When I first had that first client, I was just picking up the phone left and right. I mean, I was on the phone all day trying to land these relationships. It's not just landing trials, but we're all human beings, all trying to do a good job. And when you start connecting with like-minded people, it makes, quote, bringing in the trials a lot easier, because now you're working with people you trust, and you follow people maybe from company to company, and they're excited about your journey. You're excited about their journey. And so the technology, there are some technology out there that we are all aware of that connects or matches sort of trials with sites, but there's low people interaction. And so it makes it a little bit more almost like you're on a dating site, where you're swiping left and right, and you quite don't know what you're going to get, as opposed to maybe working with, an example might be an executive matchmakers. These people know who their clients are in and out, and they know who the other clients are, and they're trying to figure out what's going to be the best match with all of the different complexities of each of those different individuals. And so we're talking about companies. And so we are charged to thoroughly and utterly be an extension of our sites team during those conversations, so that when we do pass the torch over to them, the site owners, for PSVs, it all lines up. The metrics we said, the quality that we were talking about, when they do that PSV, they have a 85, 90 plus chance of getting that award. And that's our goal, because we are a people organization industry. So the technology, while it helps, it doesn't necessarily replace that. And so part of our major process, and what attributes the success for our sites and for our company, is picking up the phone and meeting people, going to conferences and meeting people and following up. I mean, I've made this joke. I'm not very funny, but I've made a joke before saying we should have been the follow-up company, the Clin follow-up, because that's where it's at, folks. If you have the time to follow up continuously and be organized to do that, you'll find more success in your sales or business development efforts individually. But that's all we do. And we follow up. So when we have these calls with our sites, they are very familiar with the programs by this time. The sites are, because we've told them all the details. But now we're working the sales part. Okay, how are we getting you in? What's the strategy? What are the metrics we're putting out there? What can we do? Can we bring in the physician to talk to the sponsor CRO for some reason? all these different things we can do to make them unique. There's so many great sites out there. What makes you, Brad, unique? And, there's a lot of sites that might ask us, prospective sites, well, do you have any sites that are like, within a mile of me? Well, probably not, because we're not huge. But if we did, you are a completely different site. You're a different animal. Okay. You may be pulling from the same pool, possibly, but you have your own database, your own connections, your own doctors, your own experience level. And we pull those good things out to market you to the industry. And it's always effective. And so if sites, I guess some unsolicited advice is for sites, if you pull out those unique things about yourself and you put those front and center on your website, you're going to find better traction. And that's what we do when we bring on a client. We want to know exactly what makes you strong. And we also, again, want to know what makes you weak. And we try to help you improve those things. We do have consultants and all these things to, if you wanted your SOPs revamped, or just if you needed SOPs, we can do those things for you. If you needed help with your, a lot of these things were just kind of organically, we started out as BD, but now they've asked more and more questions. And a lot of time for many years, I'm like, we're just not there yet. But now we have kind of soup to nuts program, and so we can either advise you on these things, or we can take it off your plate, from lead generation to the sales part, to PSV scheduling, to the award, and then the negotiation for budget and contracting, and then the collections. And then we have some quality control things in there as well. But yeah, so again, we pull all these things out of the site and we run with it, and it's very effective.
I mean, again, a lot of stuff in there that unpack. I mean, first of all, you mentioned, this is kind of unrelated to the specific conversation, but you mentioned, following up. And I think that's something sites need to hear, because that goes for everything you do at the site. That goes for engaging a PI. It goes for recruiting patients. It goes for business development. And I think sites really underestimate the level it takes, especially somebody like I came in, I didn't have any kind of sales background. I'm kind of an introvert, and a lot of people are maybe in the same boat. So it's like, okay, well, I asked a time or two. I don't want to be a pest. But then you realize, you look at sales material, sometimes it's 8 points of contact before you even get somebody to pay attention to you. So that cannot be understated, or can't be overstated, rather. I think, sites need to really keep that in the back of their heads at all times. And then the same thing you talk about, I think it's getting a little bit better in terms of sites feeling like they're big competitive because of geography. I've gotten studies for a site right down the road in Oklahoma City. We're a small market. We got the same study. We were both successful because we have different approaches. We had different physician relationships. So also, again, don't assume just because there's someone nearby that oh, well, that's bad for me. No, it's not a zero sum game. It's not I win and you lose, or vice versa, So I do, again, very much appreciate those. I think those are things sites need to hear.
Right.
I think there was something else in there, but I didn't make a note, so I'm just going to move on. But talk to me a little bit about, what kinds of sites, again, I talked to a lot of new sites that have problems, but maybe they have very experienced CRCs, but maybe new PIs, sites that are like us. We're kind of across multiple locations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Some sites are only looking for certain TAs and, don't want to venture into oncology or whatever the case may be, or otherwise are very diverse. So, I mean, what kind of sites do you work with in those different regards?
So currently we handle just about every therapeutic area except for oncology and rare disease. And the reason being is because we work on behalf of each of our clients. And we simply just haven't spoken with too many oncology or rare disease sites. They're typically academic or university affiliated or hospital affiliated. So all of our clients at this time are community-based sites, and they go for basically non-oncology, non-rare disease. So if we were to get a client in those areas, we certainly have been approached by our partners and alliances. Hey, we need phase 1 oncology community sites. Okay, well, we don't have any for you at this time, but they're out there. And once we do have one available, we'll let you know after they qualify to be into our program. But basically, we pursue whatever therapeutic area you're trying to get into or that you're in right now. And so there's really no limit to what we can pursue. We've pursued surgical studies, postoperative pain studies. all the way to the other programs I was talking about, from NASH to dermatology, and we cover all major therapeutic areas. So at this time, it's really limited to non-oncology or rare disease. And in terms of the size of the company, I might have just jumped to that topic. It doesn't really make a difference to us because there's so many studies out there in the world. One organization or one person can't cover all of them. It's impossible. One organization or even the larger folks out there, they can't possibly have relationships with every company. So we have our own pipeline for each of our sites that's customized, and it's usually unique to whoever else they may be working with. So we're not exclusive, which is nice. They can work with whomever they want. A lot of sites end up just working directly just with us after they see that, well, they have these studies, maybe plus some. But the unique part is we only put in front of our sites the studies they want to be considered, and it's quality. It's not as much quality. I mean, it's not as much quantity. It's more quality. And certainly, we're very, very happy when the quality and quantity are there. That's also great.
I think that's a tough lesson for sites to learn. I think it was for me in the beginning because it was just like, I want every opportunity ever. Throw it to me. And you end up kind of playing, you're just shotgunning opportunities. But again, like everything else, you'll get a very small return. But I think in those cases, you oftentimes put yourself in a bad position of getting studies that aren't good fit for you, which obviously it's a pain in the ass because you've just done all the work. You're not going to really get much payoff. You're not going to be able to help any patients. Maybe you've even made yourself look bad to the sponsor or CRO by overpromising and under-delivering. So maybe I'm unique in that, but I do feel like that's something sites suffer from, is just wanting every study opportunity and taking everyone, even when it's maybe not a good fit for them.
Well, when we started doing budgets and contracts and stuff, we were able to see a different side and kind of see contracts and budgets across the country with different areas and things like that. So when sites do come to us, sometimes they do ask, hey, what indications should I be going for? Well, based on your capabilities and interests and experience and PIs maybe, we believe these are going to be your best studies to start with. And so we will make those recommendations, and we act as part of their team, again, as an extension of their team. And the more they can interact with us, the better advice that they can, because we are always surveying the market and seeing what's out there. Obviously, we're building connections and relationships constantly with the people who maybe run the entire site selection departments of these companies. And so when we say, hey, we have a new site, they're into GI, for instance, well, that individual is going to connect us with those people if we need to talk about their upcoming pipeline. And so they can ask us, what is the hot areas of the market right now? I want everything, but what's going to be the best payoff for our efforts? And so we can get into those details. We don't fit the broker model. We're just going to throw you stuff, and we're not fitting the SMO model where we're taking control of everything. We're working with you to develop the right plan and to help you grow, to build a long relationship with us, and so that you can potentially build a long-term relationship with those sponsors and CROs that you're working with. Because if you do a good job with them, they're going to call you back for repeat business, and we are okay with that. We encourage it, right? Because it makes us only more valuable in a sense that, hey, Clinitiative knows what they're doing. They're setting us up with the right people, and they're paying attention to all the new things coming out in the market. As the market adapts, Clinitiative will, and they're going to let us know how to do the same.
Yeah, and again, that's a beautiful thing, is helping make those, again, it's like you're almost brokering those relationships, right? You want, as a site, you go out and succeed for your sponsor. They're going to keep coming back to you. But it's just sometimes getting that foot in the door. So having someone like Clinitiative who sees inside both sides, so to speak. I mean, they know your site and they know your strengths, they know the market and what's happening. So being able to really put those two pieces together, and again, recognizing from the site level, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's there. You can just go.
The wheel's
take
there.
Advantage of the wheel.
The wheel is there. The wheel is there. Sales and business development hasn't changed since the inception of time. It's the same concepts. There's nothing new. And if anyone tells you different, I'd love to learn about that. But it's person to person. It's how can we make each other's lives easier? How can we help push healthcare forward and, the industry forward, basically down to the raw relationships out there. Who can perform? Who can I trust? Who do I like to work with? Okay. We've had so many instances where PIs kind of need to be consulted on how to how to talk with sponsors because they're human beings. They don't want to be,
Right.
they want to be talked, to, not down to, or talked with, spoken with. Again, we look at the program holistically. What do we see and we don't necessarily, we're not doing it to be mean. We really want to help our clients if we have capacity or capabilities to do so within a very respectful manner. But yeah, so it just comes out down to relationships.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. Anything else as we sort of wind down here at the end of the hour, man? It's been a good conversation.
Yeah.
It's really interesting and enlightening again. And I talk to sites all the time, and I oftentimes don't know what to tell them. And the more I start talking, the more I realize just how much of a insane person I sound when I talk about how to chase down trial opportunities. So, instead start referring people over to Clinitiative and go from there. But yeah. Anything you want to put out there before we sort of wind down?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Brad. I think what you have going here is fantastic to help sites. I know there are some conferences coming up for sites, and I think that it's definitely worth sites looking into. I think there's one at the beginning of next year, rather. And so I would encourage sites to think about this conversation, think about your top attributes, and you need to showcase those on your website. You need to have your storefront needs to look professional. It needs to have your top 5 attributes on there. And don't be shy to brag a little bit. You've worked hard to get to where you are. You spent a lot of money to get there. Don't hold back. There's a lot of noise out there, and any way you can get above that noise, take it. It's going to help you in the short term and the long term. And if you can find a company like ours, or if you'd like to talk with us, we'd love to talk with you to qualify your site, to be a part of our organization, to help you get above the noise. And it's just really a win-win for everybody involved, including your patients. And we have a great passion for what we do. And I'm sure most of the people listening also do. And so finding people that share that passion and that vision and creating that synergy will only make life a lot easier for everybody. And that's why we exist. So again, Brad, I appreciate the time, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
No, of course. Awesome message to leave with. Jason, where can people find you online? Give us a plug before we sign off.
Oh, right. You know what? I had all that in front of me, but I need to look. We're on LinkedIn, obviously, Clinitiative Health Research. So it really is hard to spell. I don't even know if I want to take it's CLI.
I'm going to put it in the show notes so people can get to it. So you don't have to. You don't have to spell it if you don't want to. I think it's really intuitive.
Thanks.
Clinitiative. It makes perfect sense to me. So
yeah, it was. I'm telling you, I still have that document somewhere of about 100 names that I had to choose from that I put together, and just adding the CL in front of initiative, I thought was like the easiest thing to do. That during that point. But yeah, so clinitiative.com, right? And then anyone can please email me anytime, jason.palasota@clinitiative.com. Check out the website. We have a few exciting things coming up to help sites find good PIs. We're also training PIs these days. So
nice.
If there's a PI that we've trained in your area, maybe you can expand your eligibility for different types of studies. Or if you just need a replacement for a PI, come talk to us. We'd love to talk with you. But otherwise, you can check out the rest online, and hope to see you at a conference. And we all hope that you take the Clinitiative as well. And so I think that's about it there.
Nice. And like I said, we'll have Jason and Clinitiative's info in our show notes, so you can find them online. Make sure the website. Jason, thanks again, man.
Appreciate it, Brad.
As always, thank you so much for listening to Note to File Podcast. Make sure to check us out at notetofilepodcast.com and check out our weekly live streams Tuesday at noon Eastern on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thanks, guys.